I'm summarizing the lesson number 9 of transforming suffering to the path of enlightenment. Um, and in the lesson 9, Khenpo Sodargye, um, basically, this part can be presented. He first summarizing the whole transferring suffering and happiness into enlightenment can be divided into the 3 parts. It's the wholesome beginning, the wholesome middle, and the wholesome ending. And today we are approaching on how to use happiness as the path to enlightenment. The root text, it's by Tenpe Nyima. And we are looking through all of the teaching through the perspective of both relative and absolute truth. Before Khenpo Sodargye started talking about the main subject of today, he first reflected on by encouraging us practitioner to really diligently to practice according to the short but succinct root text, that even suffering can be turned into our path towards enlightenment. That even then we if we have like experienced like some level of discomfort, we should consider those as a exceptional blessing from the Buddha and Bodhisattva to help us advance our practice. Um, um, he mentions that even though like in the COVID-19, I mean this whole 10 lessons was taught during the COVID-19, the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic. So he was saying there's some Dharma friends are not able to join I mean at Larungar with the Sangha for the teaching, but still there's video recording soundtracks available in different forms, so we're all able to receive this teaching. And it's actually really good for transforming all of the adversity into advantageous growth that will not so easily regress in our spiritual practice when faced with obstacles. So even though we pay close attention to the very few short lectures, such as we're having now, an impact of paramount proportion can take place within the mind. But however, without any practice and any in-depth reflection, it's going to be impossible for us to actually transform the teaching to our practice. For instance, he quoted from Gem in the Dharma Garden, living a life for 100 years of being indolent or less meaningful than living one day of earnest effort. So if not able to combine these teaching putting into one's practice, the result will be meaningless, even though one has spent a century living in indolent life. So we as individual of Buddhism practitioner, we should really be able to put efforts to devote our body and mind into Dharma, even though it's even for one day, the benefit would be immeasurable. He gave examples of previous in the Tibetan Buddhism history, that the great Tibetan translator Chalo Tawa has spent only a couple of years in India. Yet after returning to Tibet, he was more than I always don't know how to say this word, like words with like competitive. It's just hard for me to say it. More than competent when it came to propagating the essential dharma to benefit vast number of the sentient being. Master Fa Xian of the Eastern Jin dynasty made a pilgrimage to India and studied for about 10 years. And he's already capable of bringing home a great number of Buddhism texts written in Sanskrit and translated them in Chinese language. Also, His Holiness Jigme Tenpe Nyima spent only 6 years studying in Sertion before he initiated his own Dharma spreading activity. And second is the second part of this. I think there's three parts before the transforming happiness to the enlightenment actually start. Also, Khenpo Sodargye really encouraged us to share this dharma transforming suffering and happiness into the path of enlightenment to other people around us, which it will be very beneficial since right now the current age is the current age. It's very easy to be to be feeling helpless or deprived by the lack of opportunities and creativity and perplexed at having faced an unknown future. So there's probably a lot of like he describes as the alteration of favorable and favorable circumstances could easily throw someone off guard. But if we take advantage of all available opportunity to engage in Dharma study and practice, even though like a pith instruction as simple as the transformation of suffering can enable us to benefit others over the long run. So he's encouraging us to not only gain familiarity with with this teaching, but to share it with the others. Um, and also he encouraged us to fully devote our body and mind to seeking the Dharma. Um, he basically mentioned happiness cannot be guaranteed towards material by having access to material wealth. That but if we were able to be offered the wisdom of transferring suffering happiness, we will able to be benefit from it for the rest of our life. Even in the final moments that we are like dying, we will be able to hold a joyful state of mind as we prepare to enter the next life. So even though this is not such sophisticated tantrums, as the five great treaty, this tiny piece of instruction can be a source of great spiritual wealth for everyone who receiving it. And so he asked us to listen attentively and reflect on it deeply. And he also recalls his old days that he was studying with His Holiness Jigme Tenpe. The living condition that time was really, really bad. I mean, it's probably very unimaginable, like in the high plateau of Tibet, and it was probably at the beginning of 1980. So there was no electricity, and they were living the adobe houses made out of like wood, pile wood and mud. And he was visited he was visited by his father's elder brother, who is quite the opposite towards optimistic. He was very stubborn. The uncle was pretty stubbornly against Khenpo Sodargye's decision for monasticism and denied in his poor adobe because Khenpo Sodargye couldn't start the fire for cooking, and the uncle got very hungry and complained, says you could be making a lot of money and having a much better material wealth by being a teacher, but why you choose to have this kind of life, you're going to regret it. But for Khenpo Sodargye, his thoughts is since he had given up on the circular pursuit and success, it would be a true failure if he did not strive with his full attention and effort in his Dharma practice. So he really was motivated to study the Dharma wholeheartedly and without paying attention to the disapproval of friends and relatives. So he hoped his personal story really inspires us, even though we might experience like disapproval from family and friends or disheartened moments happened in our life. But all of this great master, 法尊能海道庸 really have a strong determination to pursue the Dharma, and they are able to disseminate the wisdom they have found once they had returned to their homeland. So if we don't spend, even though this part, it's mostly saying we are not living for the purpose of indulging in pleasurable activity, but rather to acquire the Buddha Dharma, as this is what constitute what we consider to be a purposeful life. So we should really be spending our time contemplating the Dharma, and really devoting ourselves towards like the meaningful way of spending our time in, seeking a purpose of life. If we are not able to do so, it's truly a pity. Then we have the main section of the class starts. So it's called happiness may block our spiritual path. So during this part, he approaches the subject of happiness from different angle. For instance, I feel like here he's mostly talking about like the bad side of happiness. Um, then he started approaching the true nature of happiness. Then also from the Mahayana midway review, that it should not be going to either the extreme side. So he talks about happiness can also be established, like there's good effects of happiness towards our dharma practice as well. I'm gonna start with the first part. So in the first part, this when we are happy, we easily become overwhelmed by this strong feeling and ignore its faults, which end up blocking our spiritual progress by encouraging such negative characteristic as arrogance, self-conceit, and indolence. It's very easy to have fallen under the temporary happiness power, and got lost, giving rise to a lot of negative consequences. And we but a lot of time it's hard for us to underestimate the latent effects of happiness and believe that no harm can come out of it. So he used the example from the Lucifer Effect by Professor Philip Zimbardo, who did a prison simulation study known as Stanford Prison Experiment. I feel like this is probably like some social science and psychology experiment that measure the effect of role playing, labeling, and social expectation on human behavior over the period of 2 weeks. So there's 24 college students are assigned the role of the prison guard and prison or inmate in a simulated prison environment. But however, only after 6 days, the experiment needed to be shut down since since I listened to the Chinese audio, I mean the video, it seems to be the translation here, it's a little different. It seems like the prison at the beginning, people are reluctant to act on their role. Then in the end, people start treating each other really as if they are the guard, or really as if they are the inmate. So we can see even an ordinary or unimportant person that can be convinced to believe they are superior to the others by virtue of such external factor as an increasing in authority, money, or fame. Even in Larongar, if there's people has been selected as group leader or project manager, after being selected, someone who have been quite modest in their manner soon become imperious in their treatment of the others. So once it seems like people gain this new status, people start become to ignore their family and friends. So when people possess fame, wealth, good look, etc., the flattery that they receive from others encourages them to become arrogant and conceited. So this is why we need to reconstruct happiness as a reinforcement for spiritual pursuit. That we should really able to being humble, even though we have status, that we're able to transform happiness into towards a beneficial means for spiritual growth. Um, in the second part, he talks about the arrogant. Since arrogant, by if we're too happy, we can be very arrogant. So the great treaty on the perfection wisdom says, if a man is arrogant and hold himself in high regards, the nectar of the Dharma cannot flow into his mind. From this, we can conclude that if an individual failed to transform happiness into advantage for his spiritual practice, he's likely to be headed for downfall despite however success he may have appealed to be. Jigme Rinpoche reminds us that since all samsaric phenomena are illusory and dreamlike, neither to be proud of being rich nor become discouraged when hitting a rock bottom. So if we really think about the fertility of the worldly enjoyment, we can come up with some shifts in our thinking, such as, sure, I'm quite famous and rich, but who I am when compared to the wealthiest person, or if I'm much taller than most people, then that's nothing to be arrogant about. Certainly, I'm doing pretty well today, but that doesn't guarantee a happy tomorrow. And Khenpo Sodargye gives a story. He narrated the story about this old bhikkhu who everybody detested in the member in the sangha community of 500 sanghas. He couldn't recite one stanza of Buddha's teaching, even though after many years of their efforts. So because of this, the old bhikkhu are only allowed to do like normal chores such as sweeping. And the one day, the king invited the whole sangha to receive grand offering. The old monk was so depressed over his plight that he was about to hang himself from a tree. The Buddha observed that was a proper occasion to enlighten the old bhikkhu, so he transformed into a tree god and scolded him. Your suicide will be meaningless. Instead, you shall feel contrite to your arrogance. So this bhikkhu, back in the time of the Buddha Kashyapa, he was the Triptaka master with 500 students. But because this old bhikkhu was so proud of his intelligence and always belittle others, and he's not down to share all of his Dharma knowledge with his students. So this life, the karmic result that this old, very bad memory bhikkhu god was incapable of learning of any teaching that Buddha gives. So the bhikkhu felt very remorseful, and the Buddha reviewed him as the Buddha and told the old bhikkhu a few stanzas. Shocked by seeing Buddha's true body, the bhikkhu felt extremely happy and meanwhile lamented his previous wrongdoing. He then quickly entered a concentrative meditation, attained Arnandahood. And then he's able to recall all of his previous life and all of his previous Triptaka teaching. From this story, we can see that with arrogance, we look down on others. So as a karmic retribution, after numerous lifetimes, this time Buddha Shakyamuni, he still had to suffer from the result from the Sangha. Nonetheless, he taught the Dharma wonderfully after his karma has been purified and his previous accomplishment will be reviewed. So it is a sign of wisdom to recognize that happiness is not as reliable as one might expect, and that suffering is not as impenetrable as one might imagine. The alteration of life is of the alteration of that which brings up pleasure, and what brings out displeasure in samsara. It's like a sudden change of the weather. There's a constant fluctuation in between happiness and suffering. So we definitely should not become too attached to our emotions or to our the situation that we're in, because they are very temporal. All of it's very temporal. In this part, it's difficult to cope with happiness. So in this part, Khenpo Sodargye says, there's people are tough enough when confronted with challenges, but somehow their determination can be undermined by pleasure. Um, it seems like ordinary beings are easily submit themselves towards worldly enjoyment. Now, when overwhelmed by happiness, easily lose this direction. He was visited by his former student, and when he came to me, the former student really behaved like if he's a big toku. He kept telling me I'm doing pretty well with my Dharma activity. The government likes me and offer great support. You're my students and big sponsor. And oh, I'll be attending a science conference. Well, but Khenpo Sodargye started worrying that with his arrogance, the quality of his Dharma activity is more than a little questionable. So even like the teaching from Padma Sangha says, the ordinary people can cope with a lot of suffering, but with very little happiness. Even a lot of renowned practitioner experienced such tough time during the Cultural Revolution in China. But after the climate of religious freedom later improved, some of them succumbed to the influence of materialism in the form of showering money and other offering. So some people, even some like monastic practitioner, even denounced their monastic vows. So it's not as we can see, it is not easy to avoid being carried away by happiness. um Now he's like, we show united happiness with the Dharma practice. The root text is, that's why we need to open our eyes in whatever ways we can to the fact that happiness and the thing that cause happiness are actually impermanent and by nature suffering. So here we are talking, Khenpo Sodargye talked about, it's really important for us to recognize the true nature of happiness and the things that cause happiness. In Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, he described happiness as suffering in disguise, or as an illusion created by conceptual thoughts. 400 stanza on the midways directly tells us that happiness is actually suffering because it's ever changing. And when it turns into something else, it throws those who are clinging to it into great pain. So happiness is actually just another form of suffering. There's no difference. Happiness is illusory and dreamlike on the level of relative truth and unattainable on the level of ultimate truth. Kind of reminded us what we learned at the last class, the different kind of bird. One bird is trying to raise another kind of bird and realize it's not, even though it's not its true baby. I forgot what exactly it is. And as stated in Asivagosha's Buddha Charita, happiness is the human and celestial realms, should be regarded as insubstantial. See the world as a game for fool in which all forms are empty and lacking existence. So the happiness is actually having a very deceptive nature. So we shall not attach ourselves towards it. And also, Khenpo Sodargye says, as the day passed, life diminished. He quoted Dharmapada, as the day passes, life diminished, like fish that are experiencing water loss. What is there to be happy about? We are in the same position as a fish who are losing water, as well as some cows who are making our way to the slaughterhouse, that we are losing our life every day and we don't know when we're gonna die. So given that fact, what is there left? What is there left for us to be proud of? We should generate a deep sense of renunciation towards the phenomenal world and motivate ourselves onto the path of Dharma practice and no longer indulgence, distraction, or futile activity. oh no, we're on the good side of the happiness. All the happiness and material wealth in this world, it's thrifting and insignificant and brings with all kinds of problem and difficulties. Still, in a certain sense, it does have its good side. Buddha says someone whose freedom is impaired by suffering would have great difficulty attain enlightenment. But for someone happy, it is easier to attend. For instance, people who are suffering or people in prison who are suffer from sickness, poverty, or disability, who are deprived of freedom, are really at their disadvantage time to their Dharma practice. Um, for instance, people's life work hindered by family, career, and many other issues are not going to be able to practice the Dharma. But also there's another type of no freedom of practicing the Dharma, for instance, lack of devotions. So on the other hand, a happy individual who possess such good condition as adequate basic needs for living, social support, a lovable appearance, a healthy body, a positive mentality, and so forth, can practice Dharma and cultivate Bodhisattva easily. So actually being happy or able to have the freedom, able to have certain degree of freedom and being mentally okayly happy is actually making us enabled to embark on the Dharma path. Um, what good fortune then to be able to practice the Dharma in a state of happiness like this. So from now on, in whatever way I can, I must convert this happiness into Dharma. And then from the Dharma, happiness and well-being will continuously arise. So so for people like maybe, I mean, I think I'm a person who are in the situation is very favorable. In a situation like this, where one is endowed with all of the favorable condition for Dharma practice, one shall be joyfully appreciate their good fortune, feel truly blessed by sweet Duju and the merit that come from its positive karma. But also it's very sad that in this world there's so many distraction, indulgence. It's very pity that ordinary people spoil in their advantage in return for the cost of their suffering. But however, as Dharma practitioner, we must see happiness as a favorable means to acquire the Dharma, because once Dharma has been acquired, happiness and well-being can continually arise. Thus, Dharma and happiness can do support one another and allow the cycle of happiness to continue to turn. Um, I think that am I a little too slow on summarizing?
No worries. Take your time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. Okay. Um, so we should be really thankful towards all of the accumulated merits from the past, that we are in such a state of happiness and able to not being distracted by temporal pleasure and not letting the happiness go to waste. Um, um, and even though if I remain confined by insignificant pursuit, I will not develop even the most basic secular knowledge, regardless of how austere a practice I adopt. By exhausting the body through austerity, one's mind will be frantically disturbed. Thus, one cannot give rise to worldly wisdom, let alone transcend all sensory faculties. So actually, happiness is able to really generate a worldly wisdom. Then we are able to probably acquire the transcendent quality of wisdom. So so to engage in the practice of virtue with joy, one will attain the most supreme happiness. So, but however, if we spoil our happiness by committing to non-virtuous action, we'll suffer through the cyclic existence lacking any meaningful purpose. This part do not end up where you started. So for our happiness, or how we have the very precious opportunity to learn about the Dharma, we should really consider that maybe sometimes we feel very indifferent towards the thing that already in our possession. For instance, some people don't realize how happy or beloved they are until their parents have passed away. In a similar way, we might not notice how delightful it is when we are showered by the bliss of the Dharma. Even once a precious opportunity has gone, we'll often reminiscence about the good time it afforded us. So we should be really aware of how preciousness that we are able to receive the Dharma teaching. Oh, I think I really like this part. Um, so Khenpo says, without a positive cycle between happiness and Dharma practice, one is likely to conduct non-virtuous deeds, generate improper intent, and accumulate negative karma. As a result, they will be depleting the causes of happiness accumulate from the past, as well as exhausting their merit at a rapid pace, and will soon end up with nothing, just like an unplugged electronic device that has run out of the charge. Or use another analogy, if we attempt to boil the water in a wooden container, in the end, there will be nothing left, as in the wooden container will be consumed by the flame and the water will be entirely dissipated. Therefore, if we fail to transform happiness into the path of enlightenment and do not make use of it as advantage to engage in virtue, we'll end up where we started, or even deteriorated into the worst state where nothing of any value remains. Um, so Khenpo says we should maintain our attitude of able to what attitude able to, yeah, we should never, even though we probably cannot become a very accomplished practitioner, we should hold on to the bottom line of never receding our dharmic path. Mm. So so this part is the main point to get there is whatever happiness, whatever well-being comes our way, we must unite it with Dharma practice. This is the whole version behind Nagarjuna's garland of jewels. So whatever happiness or well-being come our way, we must unite it with the Dharma practice for optimal effects. And also when anytime we feel a little happy, we'll be start thinking about, I wish for all the being, the three realm to feel the same joy that I'm experiencing right now, that may the happiness be dedicated to their welfare. Even though even it's something as simple as tasting some kind of delicious food, you'll be thinking of the welfare of other sentient being all the time. Um, as transient as happiness is, it is a blast from a, we should be able to like spending our happiness and being able to contemplate that as transient as the happiness is, it is a blessing from the Guru and the three jewels. May this happiness be delivered to all sentient beings. So this is actually one way that we could make good use of happiness, as well as, I mean, we at the beginning of the class we did our Tulum meditation. An infinite number of sentient beings are also experiencing similar suffering. May I take their suffering upon to myself. So whatever we felt, or no matter if it's suffering or if it's happy, we should be thinking about the other people, other sentient being are maybe experiencing similar emotions as we did, and we can even take their suffering or dedicate our happiness to them. This part helps to break through the illusions. Next life. And over here, from the Nagarjuna's garland of jewels, Nagarjuna says, you receive pleasure in this life from enjoying your wealth, pleasure in the next lives coming from giving it away. Nagarjuna also addresses the ubiquitous causes of death. The causes of death are numerous. Those that sustain life are few, and even they can cause death. Therefore, always practice the Dharma. Um, and then in the latter part, Khenpo Sodargye encourage us to cultivate this contentment that we should have consistently in our life. The root text, even though we may be happy, if we don't recognize it, we'll never be able to make use of that happiness and opportunity to practice the Dharma. Instead, it will be forever hoping that some extra happiness will come our way and it will be waste our life on countless projects and actions. Um, if we fail to unite happiness with Dharma practice and fail to recognize it as an advantage to our spiritual growth, then even if something brings us pleasure, the happiness we feel cannot become a favorable condition to enhance our practice. Say, for instance, you're healthy and free of any sickness, or you're wealthy or without any financial worries, or you're doing fairly well in most aspects yet. If you're not aware that such happiness need to be used to support your Dharma practice, then your happiness will go to the waste and become meaningless. So when someone asks us, "Are you happy? When do you feel the happiness?" As a practitioner, where our answer should be the present moment is my happiest moment because I have whatever I should have. I have a healthy body, a positive mentality, adequate necessity, and the freedom to enjoy the blue sky. Or if we did not cultivate this contentment within us, we would say, I'm not happy at present, but I will be soon. I'm about to kick off a big project. I'm sure I'll become rich or powerful if everything goes my way. So this mindset, wishing for something better or fearing that you will lose something, can make people squander their life without even finding the meaningful purpose. So therefore, in order to generate an antidote to this, we need to cultivate the mind of contentment. He gives the example of Mandartri, the universal king, who even able to reign over the heaven of the 33 gods and share the throne with Indra, the king of the gods. Yet he never satisfied, which caused him finally fall to the earth and dies. So in this sutra, I recounted um, the Madhyama Agama. There's verses goes with celestial realm of jewels, a greedy man, it's insatiable. Covetousness is the only suffering and devoid of happiness. This a wise man should know. One's level, so for each person we live a very different life, and one's level of wealth indicate how much merit one has accumulated in terms of material possession. So there's no point to envy those who are richer than you. The same for one's appearance, which is a ripened result of one's previous karma. So we should be feel happy with whatever we possess, as it is not helpful in any ways to feel discontent with this or that. And it's very easy for ordinary being to feel destitute all the time because we cannot, it's hard for us to to stop ourselves from being in continued pursuits of something that we might think will bring us contentment. He quoted from Master Lian Shi, the eighth patriarch of the Pure Land School, advised, by understanding the merit of contentment, affliction in life are resolved all at once. So we shall always be reminding ourselves, I'm happy for what I have. I'm happy with what I have. From the perspective of the Western world, that greed is a positive force in society and it provokes discontent, which motivate people to work harder and seek to improve our life. However, this is not completely incorrect because discontent does incite people's desire. It is true we need to do better in our life. However, we should keep in mind that material pursuits will never come to an end if our desire gets out of the control. And desire for external thing can become endless and insatiable. And no matter how much we manage to acquire, it rarely ends with a sense of contentment. I relate so much to this. Um, and after a certain point, material wealth won't make us happier. In fact, brings some more trouble. So that's why Nagarjuna tells us always be content if you know, yet have no wealth. True riches you will have found. Contentment is the supreme of sources of the great wealth. With contentment, we'll be happy and will still feel rich, even though this person has lost all of his or her material wealth. And also contentment, the source of feeling contentment isn't limited to the acquisition of money and status. Contentment shall always leave us feeling relaxed and at ease. Um, and I think I don't know if this is the last part. Maybe it is. I'm sorry, I think I'm going a little slow. There are other ways of turning happiness into the path, especially those are recalling the kindness of the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, on the instruction for training Bodhisattva, and this will do for now. As as with using suffering as the path, so it's happiness too. You need to go to a solitary retreatment environment and combine this with the practice of purification and accumulating merit and wisdom. Um, okay. um, So there's a lot of methods that we are able to transform happiness into the path to enlightenment, such as recalling the blessing from the guru and the three jewels. It is definitely a way of transferring happiness onto the path by the being grateful to the three jewels. Another method of training the Bodhisattva is when we are training the Bodhisattva, we shall dedicate all of our happiness to the sentient being with aspiration of benefiting them. So the instruction of Bodhisattva inspire us to offer all our happiness to the benefit of all living beings, while the recollection of the three jewels motivates us to be grateful for their kindness in bestowing us with happiness. The technique of transferring happiness is very similar to that is transferring suffering. The true nature of happiness is suffering, impermanence, and empty, and all of the forms of happiness are transient, and in fact are nothing more than illusions created by our dualistic mind, or are in themselves are causes of suffering in disguise. So we should be not arrogant towards our own happiness. And we should probably be going to environment where we can be doing solitary retreat. And we should be combining the purification of karma, accumulation of merit through mandala and dharma pala offering, and by recitation of 100-syllable Manjusattva mantra or short Manjusattva mantra. Um, so through through observation towards happiness, we realize the so-called happiness is not attainable, and there's no not even through view it through the lens of ultimate truth. Not even the name of happiness can be found, let alone its inherent existence. And our happiness sometimes can be the only cause of failure or dharma practice, or even worse, cause us to accumulate more negative karma, will lead us to a miserable consequence that we were never wish for. I relate like this really to myself because I used to be a very emotional, like fluctuated person. If one were to cry an ocean of tears due to certain kind of suffering or burst into laughter so loud that the entire world could hear it, this would only indicate that the one is an unskilled practitioner. So we should be staying calm and relaxed and turn it into beneficial means towards enlightenment. Okay, thank you. I'm finishing my
Okay.
summary.
Very
Should I
wonderful.
stop? Oh, thank you. Should I stop sharing my screen or if I should continue?
Yes, maybe, yeah, temporarily, if needed, maybe I will ask you to
Okay,
share again.
sounds good.
Yeah, I think in terms of summary, um, you can see it's so good. I like those highlights and underlines. Those are very
Mhm.
good, and that also show how you have read it maybe more than one time to
Yeah, yeah,
seriously.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Thank you.
and that can show sometimes, with some kind of test or, examination in the study process, that will help, right? You may not like it, but you benefit from it. And
Yeah, yeah.
okay, yeah. In our classes used to be try as much as we can to make it more kind of informal,
Oh,
as
informal.
compared with the Chinese sessions.
Yeah, the
Uh,
Chinese session asked us to read the original text. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should read the original text. So yeah.
it was usually much more strict, right? Examinations and
Uh,
time control and all of those.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's good to, well, that could also see that you
Mhm.
resonate so much with the teachings, right? So that you don't want to you love all of them. You don't want to
Yeah,
miss anything. That's
yeah,
very
yeah.
good. I hope that's the way everyone. I believe that is.
Well, that seems to be in contrast to what I did because I don't have the ability to get in and underline and highlight everything. I just don't know how to do it. So I ended up rewriting the entire thing.
Yeah.
But, and subsequently I went from, I think it was 34 pages on
Mhm.
section 8 to 12. So I made it considerably shorter.
Mhm.
I like your method. The fact that you did underline and highlight everything.
Uh-huh.
It's a lot easier than what I did and a lot more concise. It was
Yeah. Yeah.
really enjoyable to watch and listen.
Yeah.
Yours is good too. I think
Yeah,
by
yours
doing
is
that,
really good. I think
yeah.
yours is really
By
good.
doing that,
Yeah.
you do a good summary, right? And highlighting,
Well,
what you're able to do is much quicker than writing.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
both ways result in a concise understanding of the text.
Yeah, yeah,
You,
Yeah.
you don't have a
exactly.
choice but to immerse yourself. It's really
Mhm.
good.
Okay, let's do the questions and then we can just, emerge all of our understandings or even questions into these discussions.
Sure. Now, the questions that are outlined now in the text differ a little bit from the questions that were written out in a message.
Uh,
Uh, yeah,
really, I've
yeah, a little bit. Like,
okay, I've
for instance,
copied the thing from the WhatsApp.
okay, I may have interpreted it different than the first question that I have is how have you integrated the lessons into your practice? And has my practice evolved in specific ways since the beginning of the study, and how? So I guess it's probably the same thing. It was just worded differently. So
But no problem. Go ahead with
okay.
what you
So
have.
the answer to the first question is I am grateful for the challenges brought my way, regarding them as opportunity for growth and incorporating changes to my habitual reactions and using them such as acceptance, compassion, and empathy rather than anger and self-entitlement. Right? Because in many cases, when I'm faced with a challenge or a uh, a feeling of suffering from something that's occurred, my habitual methods would be to to become angry, thinking, how could that person have done that? Or why am I faced with a situation? And I think that comes from my sense of self, and self-entitlement. I'm entitled to better. I deserve better, But if I make it a practice, and I think I'm doing pretty good at it, as regarding it as an opportunity to change that and to be accepting of the situation and adapting to it, and changing it to a path of happiness rather than suffering. I think I have to be happy for that opportunity. And as it says in the text, I mean, there was some instances where people are welcoming those opportunities, and rather than being regretful of them.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
This question, if I make it a simple one, how do you understand practice, right? What practice is? How do we practice? This can be a little bit a bigger topic amongst our more a classical way of this group. Especially the Chinese session, there has been discussions. So maybe I think we can make this question open to everyone to see how you understand. Maybe we take this opportunity just to clarify, at what point, at what phase, what one should do, be focused on, right?
This question quite suitable for me because I'm now quite sick, but almost recovery. So I will answer by camera off as I have bad cold. My face is swollen and
wow.
eyes red and swollen.
Well,
yeah, so this question very good for me. Yeah. So actually, since I start studying Dharma, and especially for this course, this suffering transfer, I will experience a visible transformation. I can feel. For example, I recently fell ill, and I suddenly remember Khenpo's teaching. He said that when a person gets sick, it's like a bird hit by a rock, completely powerless. That's exactly how I felt. How I felt now. So just a few days ago, I was healthy and busy planning what to do, what to buy in next week, thinking about next year's some tiny goals, many tiny plan, and actually it's only imagination. So, but as soon as I got sick, all those plans seems vanished. All I wanted was to recover quickly. The life is indeed not as stable as we imagine. It may so this illness make me reflect on how helpless one might feel in the moment before death. Now I think I feel hopeless, but if before death, what I will feel? So this this illness give me chance to imagine. So before death, when our body fails, and there is nothing you can do, falling ill give me this chance to think about that. Before I learned Dharma, when I got sick, I usually think, I think, now it's so unlucky. It's unlucky, and many things I cannot do. So sometimes feel angry. It destroy all my plan. Actually, now I just only have a bad cold, so it make me feel so uncomfortable. So I think about how much more suffering exists in the world, and even this time I recover, but next time the illness will come again. Maybe the more illness, this maybe more the illness is heavy than this time. Even I'm very healthy, but ultimately the death is inevitable. So I no longer feel as I used to, that feeling is such a unlucky thing. So now I actually feel happy because I reflect, and it gave me chance to think it over, that what is important. Choose the sugar brand, choose what I will wear. It's very important. It's not important. So our life has more meaning. For example, we should think about more important thing, and the illness make me feel the suffering of others also. So it make me happy, not like before. Yeah, this what I'm thinking about and what I learned from the course. So thank you.
Great. So yeah, maybe this is a joke, a Buddhist joke, as a classical, what is the word? Fundamental Buddhist, we should say, stay sick longer. But we still like to wish you recover soon. Yeah, that's very good. I think that's one good part of practicing. So first of all, it doesn't necessarily be, sitting down, close your eyes, breathe in, breathe out, and all those. But all these teachings, when we are in the scenario, especially all these, right, which is defined usually as adversities, and then we started to ponder, contemplate on these teachings that will make us like internalize all these teachings, make it part of us, right? You got more courage, more confidence, more clarity. That's practice. And of course, sometimes people in the Chinese groups, let's say, because we heard so many times, Khenpo was emphasizing on the importance of study and practice. Again, anything that can be said or can be talked, it can be easily understood one-sided. When the study was emphasized, is because many people without study much or study enough, and you started your practice, right? Go to a cave and things like that. That's usually like same as martial arts or any type of skills. You haven't really learned much yet, and you started to practice. That could easily take you to off the track very quickly. That's what the reason that Khenpo was emphasizing on the study and the practice. Of course, first of all, we don't really have to go to extreme, because even when contemplating each session's teachings, all of these, right? Some of those, when you think about it or contemplate on it, that's practice also. Yeah, I think that's what I wanna just share.
What I'm getting from this is, first of all, I have to apologize. The questions are as they're written. It's just my interpretation was different, and because there are two different types of suffering. There's mental suffering from circumstances that you encounter, but there's also physical suffering. And so it reflects on something that I experienced. I ended up getting a knee injury, and what has been brought to my attention is that basically every physical ailment that you get, or every physical suffering, is revealing of something. It's revealing of something internal that needs to be looked after. In my particular case, I am so involved in so many physical things in my life that I forget or neglect to study the Dharma, to look at my spiritual self, to do spiritual work. And so that forced me, because literally I could not do anything. And so that forced me to sit down and do spiritual work and do study on the Dharma, right? And so that was needed at the time. I have to be grateful for that. There was a period of 3-4 days that literally everybody had to do things for me. So that was a revealing and powerful experience for me. That's how I took it, rather than just the suffering aspects. So
Great. Thank
yeah.
you. You know what? Maybe we start because of time. Question 2. Let's.
Can I tell you how I interpret the question?
Yes.
Please?
Go ahead.
Okay. The way I see it is, what it's asking is, in those 10 weeks, 8 of those were dedicated to suffering. And so why is that?
Yes.
Why are we putting such an emphasis on suffering rather than 50% and 50% on suffering and happiness? So my answer to that is because happiness is never regarded as a way of suffering. Happiness is never regarded as having a negative connotation or a negative side of it, and so that's why so much emphasis was put on suffering, I think.
Yeah,
whereas in learning the practice and learning what is being taught to us in these texts is that happiness can be a source of suffering just as much as suffering in itself, or what's perceived as suffering. That's what I think.
It's been one of the most impactful aspects of this lesson for me, is just realizing how much, because I went through so much in the last couple of years, and it brought me closer to Buddhism. I did realize that when things are really, really bad, it can be hard to practice. But this lesson has made me realize how much happy moments can really kind of derail your practice if you're not careful as well. You can get quite attached to whatever worldly thing is happening, and especially when things have been a bit rough, it can be very easy to get attached to that and kind of lose track of remembering to meditate regularly and constantly remember to practice. And then it is definitely suffering because it doesn't last. Something's going to happen. And things just kind of ebb and flow. And I think that this lesson has been, these 8 or 9 weeks have been just incredibly impactful in kind of changing mindset and building a routine around kind of not letting the ebbs and flow of life kind of take me off the path of practicing. So I'm really glad I studied this one.
Yeah, that's I myself felt the same thing, and of course with confidence on the guru, on Khenpo, I accept or start to believe that everything is arranged or directed by the guru. Of course, even we go to the highest level of teaching, like Vajra Yana, and where we know that everything is our own mind and that kind of thing. Still, that statement is true. So I think since 2019, when the association, Buddhist association at Khenpo was or asked or demanded to disassemble. So I think many has experienced suffer. In that meantime, before that happened, over one Khenpo's class, he was just asking whoever was listening, can you make the aspiration to take all nothing left, all the sufferings of all sentient beings to yourself. I'm not sure how many raise their hand, but I believe many or a great majority. I think that's also a kind of way of teaching too. I don't know, maybe to this age, because when at least I'm one of them. If you're happy, you forgot, right? You started to enjoy, and then you forgot all about Dharma, all about the truth, all about what is happening, that temporary happiness that you forgot. This is, the whole house is on fire. So I think the suffering is a great or greater, not a greater way, but a way that fits today's beings, right? At least I don't know, the group people like us. That's why the 8 to maybe 9 to 1 or 8 to 2 proportion should work that way.
I just think probably like suffering. I mean, you would, I don't know, like human memory naturally just like memorize like maybe the happy moments, but you do remember all of your suffering moments too, right? So I feel like it's actually maybe a ratio of 8 to 2. I don't know. It's just a speculation. Like how much, probably 80% of the time you're suffering, or I mean, right now you have your phone or you have your other stuff with you, and then you don't realize like, oh, I'm actually suffering. But actually, we probably suffer at the higher percentage than we are actually happy, maybe. Yeah. And I also think since suffering, it's like the thing that we wanted to overcome the most. So putting suffering, like more context of suffering, it's really helpful for us to overcome it, or to even change our mindset towards looking at like what is the suffering exactly. Yeah, so I think that's why we have like 8 on suffering and 2 on happiness. Yeah.
Yeah, that hope itself is the source of suffering, right? Because you expect, you hope things are better, you always feel that's not right, it's not enough, and then compare all those. That's really kind of the origin of suffering, also.
Ebb and flow to me means impermanence, and it also means the suffering of change, because that's one of the 3 sufferings, is the suffering of change. So that's it's good to bring that up.
Okay, cool. I will start share the 3rd question again.
Okay, 3. A long time Dharma practice. You might be, there we go. You might be a millionaire, but I am a billionaire. Why did the practitioner say this according to, okay, how would you relate to this question? To me, there was a passage or a paragraph of really resonated to this, and that's insatiable covetousness, insatiable covetousness. And that's basically insatiable meaning never satisfied, and covetousness being the desire for wealth. And so that's never ending. I mean, I think, we come to the conclusion in some part of our life that we are never satisfied, like was stated in this question. One guy is satisfied with a million and thinking that that is the ultimate, and someone else comes around and says, no, well, I've got 1 billion. So I've not just accumulated, but accomplished much more than you. I'm better, so arrogance comes into play. Right. And so I think realizing that that is completely impermanent, and you could lose it the next day, either through a change in health, maybe a change in, economic situations. But, you have to realize that that is not the source of your happiness, and unfortunately, it's very easy. And I made note of this, it's very easy to fall into that trap. Extremely easy, as it states in the text in I think it was in lesson 5. You can not only attain this this false sense of happiness through material things, but also, let's say, in your position. Like they were saying in Larangar, for instance, you can have a position of teacher or as lama or as Rinpoche or whatever, as Shifu, and it's easy to fall into that trap of arrogance and happiness through that. So we have to be aware of that and do everything we can to avoid that, and understanding that the realization of happiness comes from the Dharma through practice. And one thing that I wanted to mention, we were talking about worldly wisdom, and that's a question to me. What is worldly wisdom? Because to me, the definition of wisdom is knowledge applied. You can have all the knowledge you want, but through your practice, through your study, but it's not wisdom unless you apply that wisdom, right? And through that wisdom, I think we can avoid, and through practice, we can avoid that situation of being arrogant and being falsely happy. Just takes
Totally.
practice. Yeah.
Worldly wisdom, as well as what you said, as being wealthier or higher ranking officers, or titles. All those are based on the presumption that this world of phenomena is true, right? It's inherently exist.
Exactly. There are three words that come to mind for me. The first one is gratefulness. Just being really grateful for everything, regardless of the situation. Secondly, and they coexist together, would be compassionate and empathy, right? Those are the three roots to happiness for me personally, rather than material things, right? Because material things can come and go, very impermanent, and as as I said, you're never satisfied. You may be satisfied today, but tomorrow you want more. So that's basically how I answer, how that guy felt so much better and so much happier falsely through stating that he was a billionaire.
I think I took it pretty similarly. I think it made me think of the lesson on arrogance. I think Joe covered it.
Do you see any confidence from this practitioner?
How do you mean?
Because he told someone, right, he told someone that may felt he's wealthy. And this practitioner, I'm picturing him as more materially may not have anything, not much, but he's confident he's a billionaire instead of a millionaire. Do you see it that way also?
Yeah, maybe he's trying to remind the other person to not fixate on these things.
To practice, right? Yeah, not to fix it on the material things. Yeah, good. Yeah, my take on this question is more that way. I don't know, personally, today I may see it differently, or maybe more in a correct way, let's say. But I don't know, maybe back to 10, 20 years ago, if I see a monk walking alone or begging alms on one side while the other guy driving Porsche and with like happy family or what are those, I'd say this is a billionaire, this is a nothing, right? Or maybe even a loser kind of thing. You become a monk only if you lose, kind of thing. But today is probably just the opposite, right? You could see the other one driving luxury vehicles, maybe is really down the hill kind of thing, or even falling, while the other one has the potential unseen wings that he could fly, if that makes sense, right? Yeah, so I think a billionaire, as a, I don't know, a title for a practitioner is really not nothing over. It fits. while the materially abundant yet no spiritual practice is probably more a very poor one.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also like the impermanence of worldly things, right? Like you have all these worldly things today, but tomorrow you can lose them. I think that part of this lesson has been really impactful as well.
Yeah.
So I think you're taught to really value the Porsche and everything, but
it is very hard to accept, or at least it take time. It took me quite some time. I think like at least 2 decades. And that's based on intensive study. And then I totally realized this. And that doesn't mean we go, be lazy, don't make money. No, not at all. It's really how, I think you said, fix it, right? How much attachment on it we can be reached. Actually, I think in the Buddhism world, there's a saying, poor Zen and rich Vajra. Like our teaching, like or Tibetan Buddhism in general is more a you can be rich and you will be rich. It's nothing to be ashamed of, right? Making money. And well, honestly, I think I've heard a couple of recent cases now. We're making our projects, right? The flag and all those. But I heard there are other traditions just in here, San Diego. They bought 100 acre of land, and right, you need money to spread Dharma, and money, political power. Those are all good means to spread Dharma, and of course, discussions, real understanding is fundamental. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm talking too much about this question.
No, go ahead, please.
I don't know if I've ever talked about this in this class, but before I moved here, I was living in New York, and I was working a job where I could have made a lot of money. And a lot of things about my life, people were like, wow, that's so exciting and stuff. But I was really, really unhappy, really depressed. And I was trying to practice Buddhism, but I didn't really have the time because I was working all the time, right?
I know.
You had to.
Wall Street?
Yeah, right next to Wall Street in Midtown. And it was just expected, my clients had my phone number. I was just working all the time. And I ended up getting let go, and it was like one of the best things. I lost a lot of money, and I moved in with family for a bit. And of course, like financially, things need to be sorted out because you gotta do worldly things. But it honestly, I can understand the richer, if rich is like a metaphor. I'm just so much happier now, and I'm just having that opportunity to step back and study Buddhism, and it kind of leave the kind of greedy environment a little bit and focus on what's important. I think it's a much better place to be than surrounded by money, but like a lack of Buddhism and like things that actually matter at the end of the day when you go home,
Great.
So,
I think now this is a phase like laying the foundation, right? We accumulate merit, and not only the merit, more the worldly level, but also, transcendental. Once that is ready, I think if you decide to go making money or more somewhere to meditate, you have the freedom to choose any. And I think this is a very good status or a very good choice. I experienced pretty much the same thing. I worked for my previous job almost 13 years, imagine that company grow in those 13 years from 28 people to 70,000. You could see how much work. I'm lucky because here, at least in US, you could follow the normal. You have weekends, right? And you have at a certain point you stop work. At least not as same intensity as daytime, meaning you have some off work time. But if you go back to the headquarters, it's you start from, I don't know, 8, 9 and end about 9 the earliest p.m. And usually it's like 6 days. Well, I'm kind of grateful too for those who really work that hard to support it, my work here and the time here. In the meantime, do some Dharma study. Yeah, so anyways, it could be some intertwined things. We're not able to really see very clear each of these cause and effect. But again, I think I never regret. And back to 10, again, maybe 15 years ago, if I look at the CEO, he probably the one of the one that I admire the most deeply here. But now, oh, I'm glad he became a Buddhist also. And in his board meetings, he can quickly, cross legs and using the this. Yeah. Anyways, but great majority were not yet. But yeah. Anyways, my point was that never regret, and very happy. Because what we, or at least I've experienced in this Dhamma study, I could see those 70,000 people, there could be only a couple that could follow, not many. So yeah, we're fortunate doing this, and once we're more ready, we have the freedom to choose whichever way. Okay, great. Let's continue.
Is so important, happy and obstacle. If you're happy, you could like just easily trying to pursue more happy. It's very easy to be not when you're like happy and you just like, oh, I'm happy, I don't need dharma now. Like that happened to me before. Like I used to practice like Pure Land Buddhism. So I think there was a time that I think I had some misunderstanding towards that fact that I could do everything I want still, or just like think if it's happy I can still like pursue this. It's like an endless hole, realizing that. So that kind of definitely that seek for happiness definitely like become an obstacle in the way that like I was seeking dharma. As well as for instance, if you are I think in this lesson, if you're like looking for something like your happiness, it's achieved by means of acquiring material wealth. So in the end, all of the material you accumulate in the past would become your burdens you rather than become a source of your happiness. Or your happiness, since you're pretty happy, you would be like, oh, eating so many like I would say you're gonna kill so many life, like eat their meat. That's actually your happiness become your cause of suffering then. So it's very easy to suffering would become the cause of the suffering, or happiness itself. It's not purely happiness as well. It's like suffering in disguise. So we should just be really aware of when we are happy, you should be really aware of able to like transform it towards our path and utilizing that happiness and not waste that happiness. As well as sometimes in happiness you can develop a lot of like arrogance towards Like if you're happy, you can be like, "Ah, I don't care about anything else because I'm so happy, you know." So then you just grow this arrogance and you started like taking yourself with a high regard or taking yourself like seriously, saying, I'm like so happy, you know. So it's easy to still become like a cause of suffering, and also to you're not on the path towards Dharma anymore, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, the happiness, again, to myself also, as I mean, I've said, I'm confident that's the guru's arrangement, that I was given feeding all those, whatever I understand as suffering, or, you know, unhappy, or why it doesn't stop, right? Why it doesn't come out and then becomes smooth and flat. And but I realized I'm the type that you were happy, you totally forgot the Dharma. Again, remember that the true nature of happiness is just what we pictured as happiness, right? Um, if we really just analyze, the nature is not, it's not happy, right? I mean, we've gone through the words of my perfect teacher, some of us. There is a good analysis reasoning on those, that it's not really happiness. It's suffering itself, meaning suffering is closer to truth, right? Is closer to truth, or is closer to the fact that we actually take this whole phenomena wrong, in a wrong way. I mean, it will help us to maybe to closer to realization or waking up. That's why, in that sense, happiness is a obstacle, is a is an obstacle in a path. But of course, I think later part, Campbell has said, we do need favorable conditions, right? You cannot be constantly suffering as if you're in the hell. So you don't have a moment to even think about Dharma. We do have that. But I think the good news, once we either experienced enough quantity of suffering, or realize suffering may not be suffering itself, right? Once we realize that, and then when we were given favorable conditions, which we define as happiness, then we could use it as a good condition to practice Dharma also. I think that's good. Otherwise, if we're not there yet, when we get happiness, and then we quickly off the track, right? go somewhere else. Okay, cool. Little bit on arrogance. That's the last question. I don't know, maybe we spent just a couple of minutes for that topic. If anything has anyone has anything to share on the show the question here. Why arrogance is a problem, is problematic. Maybe just basically that's quick discussion on this.
I think once you're arrogance, you just reject. You feel, for instance, you start being like, "Oh, I already know this. I don't need to listen to this." I think a lot of times it's how arrogance, like I observe from myself or I observe from people around me. That's how arrogance mostly like manifested. And also they think like, "Oh, I already know this. I'm like perfect, so I don't need to know this." So of course, any of the potential you can study, you can learn would not go into your heart at all. Um, and also, oh, I don't know if I attended lesson 5. I think I only like, can someone like answer this question a little bit more by talking about lesson 5?
I don't even remember what was taught specifically, but I think that the idea is the same. So if arrogant is very, wow, it could be a wrong thought especially you mentioned, I know it already, right? I know this. I know this since I was 3. But it's just, again, just block you from taking
Yeah.
anything new. Right? I think I've shared learning is really a process of accepting and changing oneself. If you don't start even with accepting, right? I know this already. Why you know why you teach me all this kind of thing? Of course, happiness, you know, affluence can be the source of arrogance too, right? Because we all have seen people when they're arrogant. Everything's good, right? Why should I? I don't care. That kind of thing. There's so many people, yeah. But again, they don't pay attention on that slight. Khenpo Zungsa Chincha Rinpoche said, what is Buddha nature? Buddha nature is everything, when everything is good, you still feel a little bit unsatisfied, a little bit empty. That is Buddha nature, right? Follow that. Unfortunately, most people said, okay, this is just a little bit bad mood. It will go if I take a drink, spend some money, or you know, or take a check, or those. Anyways, this also could be, all these can form arrogance that again blocks the chance of Buddha, of the Dharma study, and of course block the path to real truth. Okay, great. Thank you for the discussions. It's been great. Time to dedicate, share.
By the accumulation of merit, may I obtain all-seeing omniscience, and may all faults be defeated. The whirling turbulent waves of birth, aging, sickness, and death, from this ocean of samsara may I liberate beings. Just as the Bodhisattva Manjushri attained omniscience, and Samahabra too, all these merits now I dedicate to train and follow in their footsteps. As all the victorious Buddhas of past, present, and future praise dedication as supreme, so now I dedicate all these roots of virtue for all beings to perfect good actions. Om Ahom Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hum. Om Ahom Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hum. Om Ahom Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hum.